I'm representing for the old folks, the bold folks, the trailblazers that had nothing but cards and dice. These baby video game masters, they can sit and cry 'cause we was skinning oaks before you was a gleam in your daddy's eye. I'm representing for the old folks, the bold folks, the four-eyed losers with nothing but our hearts and minds, who need a big screen TV from some foreign nation 'cause the theater of the mind has always been in ultra definition. Greetings, fellow cyberdogs and fellow Minecrafters and fellow mine squatches all over the world. This is Delakaba with stories from the Big Red Chair number 3. Today's story is a story told by many of the Native American nations in the United States, and it is called The President of the Dogs. Now, this story was related to me by a gentleman by the name of John Redbird. John Redbird was an amazing elderly fellow who lived in the little town where I grew up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Iron River. Now, at that time, that was back in the 70s, there was a lot of very casual racism, I guess is the best way to express it. And how this manifested itself in John's life is that people called him Chief. And to protest this and to kind of make his point, what John did is he went and he bought himself one of those children's war bonnets. You know, that you used to back when I was a kid. You know, Cowboys and Indians was what we played, and you could buy cowboy hats and you could buy war bonnets and rubber tomahawks and all that kind of stuff. And so what he did is he bought one of these kids' war bonnets with all these gaudy red and yellow and green feathers with this poorly printed plastic band, and he wore this everywhere, all the time. And it was his protest against the casual racism of everyone calling him Chief simply because he was Native American. Now, John was a hunting, fishing, and drinking buddy of my dad's. And the way they met is during the late fall months when the walleye were not biting, because my dad was a fisherman. My dad went out and did what he did best, which is gone fishing. And he caught himself a mess of walleyes, and he stopped in at the Jack-o'-lantern bar, which was one of the little local bars there. And they asked him how it was going. He expressed he had caught the fish. Well, John was sitting there, and John was under the impression that that time of year there wasn't a human being alive who could catch a walleye, let alone 6 walleyes. And he called my dad a liar. He told him straight to his face that he was, you know, you're a crock of shit. What are you talking about? You caught walleyes. So my dad took him out, showed him the walleyes out in the cooler. And, you know, John was a very savvy fellow when it came to this stuff, and he could see very plainly that these were fresh-caught fish. These were not frozen fish or fish, you know, that were in some fashion a ruse. My dad had actually caught these fish, and John just had to know, and so they sat down, started drinking beer and trading stories, and the next thing you know, they were pals. Well, John found out that I have some Native American in me. That in my mom's side of the family, where there were some Pennsylvanian Dutch Quaker people, and they had some Native American people who had married into their family eventually, and I have a small amount of Lakota in me. Just a dead end. Ooh, I'm going to have to make something snazzy out of this. But in any event, when he found out that we had a little bit of Lakota in us, he was bound and determined we had to know something about our heritage, something about you know, these people and where they came from and what life was about for them and so on and so forth. And among the things that he taught me and told me is this story, which I'm going to relate to you today. Sorry, that's a long intro, but you got to know where it came from, all right? Because I'll tell you what, if I can do justice to this story in the fashion in which John would tell it, you'll not forget this one, all right? So here we go, folks. The President of the Dogs. And I'm going to do this in the style of John Redbird, and this is an homage to him, not in any way poking fun at Native Americans. All right? Long ago, the dogs were led by the President of the Dogs. He was the wisest dog. He was the bravest dog. He was the President of the Dogs because he was the best of everything that was a dog. And when the time came that the President Dog died, all of the dogs everywhere were all one nation, being led by President Dog. And as soon as he died, they had to choose a new leader, and they couldn't agree. First, some thought that it should be the wisest, some thought it should be the bravest, some thought it should be the strongest, some thought it should be the biggest. But all of those were mostly the wisest who thought it should be the wisest, the biggest who thought it should be the biggest, the bravest who thought it should be the bravest. You see how this works. And so, with these great difficulties, they could not choose a leader, and many, many months went by, and eventually a year, and then another year, and then another year, and something had to be done, or all the dogs were going to come to an end. They would be scattered as a nation forever. How would they ever come together again under a new leader? And so, old Shaman Dog understood what had to happen, and he came to the young people, to the young dogs, and he said, "My people, my friends, my families, I am going to go to visit President Dog in the afterlife. I'm going to go to the fires of the ancestors, and I will get his wisdom, and I will bring back his answer." The young dogs, they laughed. "You're not strong enough. You're not brave enough. You're old. Look at you. You're gray. Look at you. You can barely walk. You can barely smell. You can barely hear. Look at you." But Shaman Dog says, "I am going, whether you say yes or not." And so he went. Following his bravery, he traveled north from the place of the Minikanju up to where the Ho-Chunk were. And then he went even farther north from where the Ho-Chunk were to where the Ottawa lived. Along then he went to the east, and he came to the place of the Mohawks. Came then to the place where the great waters of the east came up against the land. And he looked out over the great ocean with nothing there to block out the sky. And he looked at the great stars, which were the campfires of the ancestors. And with great courage and great pride, he walked into the waves, and he died. Well, when he became aware of himself again, he looked around, and it was the campfires of the ancestors, and there were all the dogs he had known that had died. There were all the people from his youth, all the things and all the ones he loved, and he was so overjoyed. Happiness was in his heart. And he ran all around, and he said hello to them all, and he ate with them, and he played with them, and they ran about and sang songs and danced dances and told stories of hunts, and it was wonderful. And one day he was out running across the fields with the spirit of the president of the dogs, and the president of the dogs says, "This is so wonderful to see you, my old friend. I'm wondering, we haven't talked about it, but once I left, how did you guys do? You know, who's leading you now?" And suddenly old Shaman Dog remembered. He was on a mission. He was supposed to be getting an answer, and he'd forgotten. He was letting his people down. He said, "President Dog, I was supposed to come here to find an answer for how it is we're going to choose a new leader. We have tried so many different ways, but we can't all come to an agreement. There are so many of us." Well, President Dog said, "This is not good. You must have a leader, or the dogs will be scattered all about for the rest of time." I'll tell you what, I will give you my wisdom. Among our people, we love our tails. Why? Not because they wag behind us, but because they remind us of the past, where we have come from. We love our noses. They're very strong. But we love our noses not because we can smell and they are very strong, but because they remind us of our future, the path that we must walk. And during that place between the tail and the nose come all the great stories of wisdom of our people, the great deeds of our warriors and our hunters, the wisdom of our mothers, the beauty of the daughters, the bravery of our sons. In order to choose the new president of the dogs, you must go back, and all the dogs that can come forward, every dog will have his day, every dog will have his hour to come forward and sit before the council fire and tell his stories. And the dog who has the greatest story, the story of the greatest bravery and wisdom and all those things that make a great leader, that our people take pride in, that's the person who will be president of the dogs. Oh, Shaman Dog, he was so happy. He had his answer. He said, I have loved being here so much, but I must go now. I must take this back to the people. I must tell them your wisdom. But President Dog looked very sad. And Shaman Dog could tell that President Dog had great sorrow in his heart, and he said, I know you, President Dog. You have great sorrow in your heart. Why do you have this great sorrow in your heart? And President Dog said, my dear, dear friend, when you go back to the land of the living, you won't remember any of this. President Dog, what will I do? How can I fulfill my mission if I cannot remember any of this? And President Dog said, I was made president because I'm the wisest of the dogs. Now, you listen. This is my coup feather. I use this to count coup on my enemies. It's a sign of my leadership. And he hung it on the ear of Shaman Dog. He said, when you return, the people will see the coup feather. They will say, Shaman Dog, there's the coup feather that belonged to President Dog. You've seen President Dog. And Shaman Dog said, that is a very good idea. And President Dog said, of course it's a good idea. That's why I'm president. Now, you will not remember the wisdom that I have given you, so we must remind you that you have received wisdom. And he took off his necklace of beads, the sign of his wisdom, and he hung them on Shaman Dog's neck. And he said, when the people see the coup feather, they will know you have seen me. And when they see these beads, they will know you have spoken to me, and I have given you wisdom. Shaman Dog was very impressed by the great, great intelligence of the leader, the president of dogs. And he said, very well, now I will know that I have seen you, and now I will know you have given me a wise answer. But how will I know what the answer is? And President Dog says, I have an answer for that too. And he went into his wiki-up, and he took his hunting bow, and he removed the string, and he came back out, and he said, come here, Shaman Dog. And when Shaman Dog came forward, he took the loop on one end of the string and he put it on the end of Shaman Dog's tail. And then he took the other end of the string and brought it down and he hooked it on the end of Shaman Dog's nose. You know how dogs have, they have the little butterfly there at the corners of their nose? It was perfect. It stayed right there. And Shaman Dog said, I don't understand. What are you doing? And he said, listen to me. Remember what I just told you. We love our tails because they remind us of our past. We love our noses because they remind us of our future. And in between those two places, our tails and our noses, is where we live our lives. And this, the string, the bowstring, well, it's a sign of a warrior, yes. It's a sign of a hunter, yes. But it's also the string that ties the past to the future. President Dog, you are indeed the wisest of the dogs. And so I will return and they will see the coup feather and they will know I have spoken to you. They will see the beads of wisdom around my neck and they will know that you have given me a wise answer. And then they will see the string from my nose to my tail and know that the stories that tie together our past and our future, the stories of bravery of the hunters, that will be the one, the greatest story, the president of the dogs. President of the dogs said, you have done well. Go now. Take my wisdom to the people. You will return soon. I shall see you again, my friend. Why? And so they parted company. Why, hey. And away they went. So, Shaman Dog, he came down the clouds, came to the ocean, ran the waves, rode them in, came to the shore. The salt in the waves took all the color out. He had white hair now. And the feather, the coup feather hanging from his ear, the beads on his neck, the bowstring. He returned to his people. First he traveled through the land of the Mohawk, and then he went to the land of the Ottawa, and then traveled south through the places of the Ho-Chunk until he returned again to the place of the people. And when he returned, they were all surprised, and they all came out to see him. They had never seen anything like this before. And when they came up, they said, Shaman Dog, you've returned and you look younger, but your hair is white. And what is this you have? That is President Dog's coup feather. You've seen President Dog. And Shaman Dog said, yes, I've seen President Dog. And they said, well, did President Dog have an answer? Oh, look, you wear beads of wisdom around your neck. He's given you a wise answer. And Shaman Dog said, yes, he's given me a wise answer. And they said, well, what is the wise answer, Shaman Dog? Well, now Shaman Dog was on the spot. He had to come up with an answer. He didn't have the luxury of going and spending a bunch of time somewhere to be able to figure it all out. So he stepped up and he said, do you see, my friends, the coup feather given to me by the president of dogs? They said, And he said, my friends, do you see the beads of wisdom given to me by the president of dogs? And they said, huh? He said, my people, do you see the bowstring from my nose to my tail? And they said, oh. He said, do you know the meaning of this? And they said, oh. He said, it is like this, nose and tail. The string we know, this is the line of the past to the future, yes. Oh. We know that from the tail is where we come from, the nose where we're going, yes. Oh. Here's the wisdom President Dog has told me. And they all paused and listened close. The dog who has the best smelling tail shall be president. They looked at each other. Shaman Dog, what? Don't you see my nose? My tail? Doesn't that tell you that a nose and a tail are supposed to come together? They're tied together with a string. So the dog who smells best under his tail, he will be president of the dogs. Well, they immediately began running around. Of course, first one they checked was Shaman Dog because, of course, his tail was already up in the air, you know. And, oh no, you're not the president of the dogs. How about, well, maybe vice president. But hey, am I the president? Am I the president? Aw. They checking. And to this day, the dogs are not one people. Scattered all about, and to this day, they do not have their president. And to this day, every dog when they meet, check to see if they're about to meet the president. Thank you very much for joining me, Delakaba, for Tales from the Big Red Chair. I'm out. Peace. I'm representing for the old folks, the bold folks, the trailblazers that had nothing but cards and dice. These baby video game masters, they can sit and cry, 'cause we was skinning oaks before you was a gleam in your daddy's eye. I'm representing for the old folks, the bold folks, the four-eyed losers with nothing but our hearts and minds, who need a big screen TV from some foreign nation, 'cause the theater of the mind has always been in ultra definition. I'm representing for the old